Hello, November the 5th, Guy Fawkes Day for the Brits. So this is a Guy Fawkes Day special. Before I get into the UK stuff, just to note that the Richard Koo doc, the latest one that was on the Nomura notepaper, nine pages long, the easy one, the frustrated, they're not listening to me one, I thought it was strange. It wasn't on Nomura's site. It was at a Dropbox address. Now it's not there anymore. The Dropbox address just goes to a 404. So anybody that's got a copy, I wouldn't mind. I know it's in PDF form, but I wouldn't mind a copy myself because it's gone from the interwebs. Anyway, let's get into the UK, and what a bitch of a time I had. Started yesterday, preparation for this. Getting information together about the UK economy is fiendishly difficult. Okay, I've made a note at the top of this first one. Her Majesty's Treasury Gov UK. That's where I got this from, just to show that they're official figures. And in a way, you can see that it's from Her Majesty's Treasury Government UK. Look at the way the billion in pounds is just splurged over the numbers on the vertical column. And the chart 2, trends in public spending since 1991-92. They couldn't even, just shove it over left a bit and get the 91-92 on the same line. This is Her Majesty's Treasury presentation crap. And the whole getting together of information in the UK is getting an awful lot better than it was. So they are getting there, but it's obviously done by old people that have been taught what to do, and they're just doing it with one finger. It's generally awful bad presentation. I've got the best I can out of it. Right, get on with it, Nick. You're wasting their time. The blue line is the GDP. 1991 or 1992, so 20 years ago, about 600 billion. It's gone up nearly 1,000 billion since there. Since then, it's 1,529 now. It's gone up lots and lots. Government spending has gone up a lot, but not that much. You can see it was flat 91 to 2000. In number form, which is on that vertical axis, billions of pounds, 200 billion, it went up to 400 billion, but it took 10 years to get there. And then since the amount spent now is 700 billion, which is 45% of GDP, that top number, 1,529. So 45% of the transactions are transacted by the UK government. That number, I think at its max was about 47, but with GDP going up, then the actual percentage number has come down. Important to note that it was really from 2001 onwards, it was heading up at quite a steep line, but not as steep as GDP. But it's flattened out now. It does actually look like the government. What's the word when the two of them were working together? Forget. Cooperative government. The Conservatives and the Liberal people have actually started to stop spending a bit more now. You can see that has flattened out. A bit of an increase 2 years ago, but it's pretty flat where it is now. Okay, so those are the actual total managed expenditures of the government from Her Majesty's Treasury. Right, I got this one from the House of Commons Library, noted that at the top. And these figures going back to 1998, but if you follow the link it goes further north, back into the past. The first column is the deficit number. So back in 1999, 98, 99, there was no deficit. They were actually paying off past debts, and they were doing that for 3 years, 99 and 2000. They paid back 4.5 billion, 15 billion and 40 billion. There was not much deficit in 2001. And then it was Gordon Brown being the end of boom and bust. And the deficit was pretty flat, really. 26, 33, 41, 37, 33, 37, until the big crash. Then it goes, oh shit. 97, 159, 141, 121 we are now, and you can see that deficit has come down slightly. So this is what they go on about, that they are getting on top of the deficit. It's gone down from 141 to 121, but if you look back, 5 years before that, it was £100 billion less. So the projected future below the black line is that the deficit's going to go to 120 next year, then 98, then 75, then 52, then 21, which is better than Labour were doing, and it'll be so good. Not a chance. Okay, because obviously as soon as they stop spending there, the economy will fall apart, and they'll have to spend more on unemployment insurance and all sorts of stuff, housing, because nobody will be able to afford to pay their mortgages. Okay, the second column is the deficit as a percentage of GDP, and as you can see, they've run since the 7%, 11.2, 9.6 and 8, running at 8% of GDP deficit, like the United States, has kept the country together. 7.6 next year should keep the country together. Oh, excuse me, having a moustache day. Right, but 5.9, 4.3, 2.8 will only be appropriate if the economy is recovering. Third column is the stock of debt. Actually, each year you add to your stock of debt if you've got a deficit, and it started at 350 billion. It's gone through 1 trillion now, which is 1,000 billion. And even with these wonderful cutting back measures in 2016, it's going to go from the trillion it is now to 1.5, near just about 1.5 trillion anyway. And then the fourth column is that number, the debt stock as a percentage of GDP. And basically it looks like they want to keep it stable in the 70s and not hit the 80s. And they'll be damn lucky to get away with that, because they need the GDP number to be kept up high. Right, this was from the Bank of England. Horrible website. Chart C, lending to UK resident households and businesses. This was right at the bottom of one of their documents, and basically they're calling it M4, but don't get too upset about it, them calling it M4, but it's actually the real big number that we want, in as in are banks lending to business and households in the UK, and this chart actually shows that. The FLS that they're talking about is this new Government and Bank of England programme that they're doing together, that the Bank of England will just about pay banks to lend now, or fantastically cheap if they increase their lending. But if they don't increase their lending, then they have to pay more expensive for their borrowing from the Bank of England. It's really encouraging the banks to lend. That's the idea. That's what that dotted line is. Kind of vertical dotted line you can see at the end after the 2012, and that they think is going to change everything, and quite a lot of this document was about that. But you can see that they were basically pushing out more and more money at over a 10% rate from 2000, 2002, 4, 6, 8 till they hit the oh shit. It comes down from 08 to 010, from 10% down to bugger all. And from the end of 09 through 10, 11 and 12, it has been bugger all and bugger all. The increase in lending has been bugger all for 3 years now in the UK. Bank of England. That's the best one I can find. Damn the facts. Right, I'll put this in because it's not quite in fitting with everything else, but it is interesting. Again, from the Bank of England, I fell across this. UK 10-year spot real interest rates. Basically, your real interest rate. 10 take this one is based on the yields of the index-linked government bonds, which is a good way of doing it. But basically, if you put money in a bank, in a short-term account, you'll get a certain amount of interest rate, and then take from that amount the inflation rate, and how much money are you actually making in real terms. Is your interest rate above or below the interest rate? Is your interest rate above or below the inflation rate? And this goes back to 1986, when you were normally getting 4% over the interest rate, over the inflation rate. In other words, money invested, money given to a bank, you were getting 4% ahead of the game every year. That has come down and down and down ever since, which was really, if people were knowing this, and they were indirectly knowing this, they didn't directly know this, it was becoming less and less logical, rational, to leave your money in the bank, because you were getting less and less and less over the inflation rate. And now, as you can see, since 2011, it's actually negative. This one from the ONS, the Office of National Supervision. It's the body that's been set up to keep an eye on the Treasury, so the Treasury doesn't give over-optimistic government swayed figures. So it's meant to keep up with them and give out its own projections about how things will be. They are independent. Office of National Supervision, something like that anyway. But getting the bloody savings rate out of any of this lot, it was bloody difficult. The best I could get was an XLS, forgetting what Microsoft's thing is now. Anyway, spreadsheet. You just download the figures into a spreadsheet, which is what I've got behind, and create, when you've got it on your own computer, you create the chart yourself. So this one, which is 5B, if you're keeping up, is the chart that I created from their figures. So this is the real savings rate for households in the UK. Going back to 1998, where it was about 7 or 8%, as we know, from 98 to 2008, it came down and down and down. They were being rational and not keeping their money in the banks. They were spending it. And oh shit, happened in 2008, and the savings rate's been up to 9, but it's wobbling around about 7 now. So the savings rate is back where it was back in 98. Obviously, with the savings rate, money goes into a bank and can just stick there. The old idea is the money goes into a bank, and economists think that if money goes into a bank, well, that's automatically lent out again by the banks. And so savings rate isn't really saving at all, because it's just intermediated straight back out into the economy again by banks. But we know banks don't work like that. So that savings rate we can call is just stuck in banks. Doesn't mean it is, but we can call it that way. Just to round this off, because what we've got with all of that is the whole idea of the money supply going down and the velocity of money going down. And if and when that happens, the GDP goes down, and you'll be in a triple-a-dipper before you can say Guy Fawkes. But I'm going to finish with this, because the people that have understood and are going along with this should be maybe annoyed. I don't know. I'm not particularly annoyed, but they could be annoyed by this. The business. Offshore wind turbine orders grind to a halt. This is says it's November the 4th, but it's really this morning's Financial Times. Orders for offshore wind turbines have come to an abrupt halt in the United Kingdom, in what some industry figures say is the first clear sign of a long-feared slowdown in renewable energy investment. The 3 leading manufacturers of turbines due to be made for the vast banks of wind farms planned for British seas have taken just 1 offshore order between them this year, the FT has learned. This year is coming to an end and they've had 1 order between them. The whole, I'll tell you why, obviously, it's obvious why I'm saying this. If the government wanted to spend on anything, that would be one sort of thing it could spend on. One sort of thing it could spend on. If for nothing else, just to show willing. And just kind of showing a possible way forward. If for nothing else. Anyway, Guy Fawkes Day. Those UK figures are absolutely horrible, and there is no way the UK economy is going anywhere but down, just in case you didn't get the gist of those figures. Bye.